Like to welcome the one and only Tim Motzer.
I see.
As I've learned, I've been mispronouncing his name for 20 years, but but that's okay. How are we doing? Yes, it's a beautiful thing. We're going to get it right this time. How are we doing?
Doing good. You know, it's Saturday. It's here in Philly anyway. It's a beautiful day outside. So, you know, I just feel really positive today and great, you know.
Well, good. It can be a challenge these days, I know, with the COVID challenges and everything. How has that worked for you?
Well, it's day by day, I think, you know. It still pops up in my daily life as everyone's. And I'm working at a university where I work with dancers. And, you know, we have to work in masks all day long. So I'm in there playing for them for about 5 hours. And we all have masks on. They're dancing around. And it's like, it's challenging. You know, it's mentally challenging. Yeah. And it always feels good once you get outside and can pull the mask down and breathe again, you know. Feel like the Black Lagoon sometimes, you know. So.
Should have installed gills. Now you think of that. That's a pretty good plan. I've been following you off and on. You've kind of existed kind of in the outer circle of my music world for a couple of decades now.
Wow.
But yours is just one of those names that pops up in places, right? There he is again. What's that about? How about for the rest of us, for the neophytes out there? Can you give us the Tim Motzer story?
Well, it's kind of semi-long, but I'll try to do the condensed version. And you know, I've been playing music for, you know, I think I started playing guitar when I was 11, so it's about 50 years of guitaring at this point. And I would say around 96, I started to get more on the world platform and working with King Britt and a couple albums that he put out called Silk 130. And I worked with him doing a lot of remixes. King Britt is a pretty famous DJ, and now he's a professor at San Diego University teaching Afrofuturism and things like this. So a really amazing dude, and we've been friends forever. And through that relationship, we did an album called King Britt Presents Sister Gertrude Morgan, which has just been an amazing ride that is still percolating, that record. And we did that in 2005. And around that same period of time, I was working with the Roots Camp, and I was working with DJ Jazzy Jeff as a house guitar player, and I worked with Patti LaBelle. So here I am in Philadelphia. You know, Philadelphia is just such an amazing place for all the music that's going on here. And then I started my label around the same period of time. Around 1999, 1K Recordings began, and worked with Les Nubians, toured with them, and then Ursula Rucker called me to see if I would be interested in working with her. She's a poet here in Philadelphia, world-renowned, and she had just got signed by K7 in Berlin. I said, yes, of course. She goes, well, the first gig is at the Tower Theater, and we'll be opening for Nina Simone. So that's kind of how the international Tim Motzer got going in a nutshell, like all those kinds of projects. And then I had all my own bands. You know, I was working with Ari Honig in a band called Jazz Heads, and we did that for several years and played in Toronto and New York and Philadelphia primarily, New Jersey a bit. And, you know, moving forward, just stuff kept happening and more albums came out. I have a band called Orion Tango that we're about to release our third record, so that's really exciting. And that's like a power trio that delves into progressive rock. And on this album, it gets into mutated metal as well. That's a first for us, getting even darker maybe, you know. But there's a lot of emotions that music brings up. So, you know, I like the full array of all the emotions and the rainbow of music, so to speak, that's out there. So that's
absolutely.
There's a lot more.
how do we define the Tim Motzer sound?
It's eclectic, I would say. I've over the years I play solid body guitars, like Stratocasters and baritone guitars, Dan Electros and stuff like that. But because I've been working with dance for over 25 years, I've been using an acoustic electric guitar, and that has become kind of my main axe. And as a result, I think a lot of people know me for that sound. And that acoustic electric guitar goes through a myriad of electronics. And by the time it gets out the other end, it may not actually sound at all like a guitar. So, I'm in that ambient soundscape world, maybe abstract. And the jazz influence comes through in that too, because I like soloing over those soundscapes or finding melodies and things that tie it together and kind of work in the idea of orchestration as guitar, like building textural sounds and many, many layers. And so that's part of that. And I work with prepared guitar too, using capos and clips and bows, and none of this is new. You can go back to Fred Frith and a variety of masters that have been doing it since the 60s. But ultimately that all goes back to John Cage with the prepared piano. I think that's where the original idea was, and mutating a guitar or a piano and turning it into some other kind of sound source. So I kind of see the guitar as a guitar, but it's also, I see it as a controller now. It's like I can play drums on an acoustic guitar, and I can put that through pedals. And so, everybody's doing that, but I've been doing that for 20 some years. I think I started looping in 1988 and just kind of found that sound and was like, wow, I love this area. So that I've kind of been in that for all these years.
I was going back and looking at YouTube, and the stuff that was posted there, and that was one of the first things that got my attention. Okay, he's soundscaping, but he's doing it with an acoustic, and I've come from the Robert Fripp type school of quasi Les Paul and massive rack and switching pickups and whatnot. There's a more percussive element to using the acoustic.
I think so. Yeah, there's more wood in the sound. It's funny. Like I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, "What is your main axe?" I said, "It is the acoustic, really, just by default, because that's what I play the most. And I want to play the Strats, and I want to play some of the other solid bodies I have. I've always been a Fender guy, so I really like Tellys and Strats and Jazz Masters and all those things. Love those sounds. But whenever I do play those guitars, in my brain, I start thinking about all the masters of the Stratocaster. For instance, it could be Jeff Beck. I might hear Jeff Beck when I start playing, or Jimmy, of course. Your namesake. And
he spells it right.
What's that?
And he spells it correctly. That's the important thing.
Yeah. And, I go back to the acoustic and I feel like, oh, this is my voice. This is my pure voice, and I'm not as distracted when I play that. I just hear me, I think. So I think that's why I sit on the acoustic guitar, and it presents challenges live, like in Pact or in other bands that I play in. If it gets too loud on stage, it could be a real problem. That guitar can feedback and stuff like that. But on super loud gigs, I have to use a different guitar. Is what it comes down to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And speaking of sound overlapping, I've watched some of the stuff you did with Markus Reuter.
Oh yeah.
Who also does some really interesting soundscaping. How is it trying to leave space for one another, working in an environment that I'm assuming is largely improvisational?
Yeah, it's just the biggest canvas, and I feel like when we play, it's really a three-dimensional canvas. It's like a sphere, and there's plenty of room for us to do anything. I don't think that it's ever been an issue of you're on my space or you're stepping on my toes or vice versa. We just listen and play, and we've made some amazing records. The last one we did was called Rapture, and it's my favorite of all the albums we've done, although Descending is also a favorite.
Right.
in our first one, and has a really nice cast of musicians, including Pat Mastelotto and B.J. Cole and Theo Travis are on that record. So that's kind of a classic album at this point. But Rapture, I think a lot of people haven't heard that album yet. It's something to behold, I think. Good for the
I need to hear more of it. I need to hear more of that myself. There's something to be said for chemistry when you work with somebody like that. How do you know when you've found the right person to work with?
Such a great question. I pride myself on working with people where there is a chemistry, and sometimes you get thrown into situations like Pact was largely created by Leo from Moonjune, and Leo was like, yeah, I have this idea for a band, and I had played with Kenny Grohowski before. He said, it'd be you and Kenny and Percy Jones on bass. I'm like, oh, well, say no more. I love Percy. I've always wanted to play with Percy. And he goes, and Alex Skolnick on guitars. And I'm like, oh, another guitar player. He goes, yeah, he's from Testament. He's like a shredder, but he's into all kinds of stuff. I'm like, great. Well, let's check it out. Well, you never know in a situation like that what the chemistry is going to be like. And in the case of Pact, the chemistry is unbelievable. Like, we really come together and we really listen, and it's one of those special bands that it's a blessing that it just happens to be that we all vibrate in the same thing, and we all come from completely different worlds in a way. I think there's some lines that go through that we all share, but we're all from different kind of worlds, and I think that's kind of a great thing. It's almost better if everybody in a band comes from different places and musically, and makes for some interesting music, I'd say.
Makes sense.
So the chemistry of a band, it's like, I'll see a musician that I'd love to play with, or some friends of mine that we're friends. We have a language already, and when we get in the studio, there's a magic there, versus someone you have no chemistry with. It's just a complete struggle. There's nothing easy about it. Not that playing is always easy, mind you, but
right.
But it can
it
can be a complete struggle if you're not compatible with the person you're working with.
Right.
It's like in any relationship, really.
Right. Every little advantage helps, I would imagine. I'm going to shamelessly plug the Pact album for you, which is fantastic and available on Bandcamp for those of you paying attention. Get over there and get yourselves a copy. You have a few albums over there, I do believe you wanted to emphasize, maybe a little Motzer 101, if you will.
Yeah.
What would you like to discuss?
Well, if you go to 1krecordings.com, that's where my catalog is. There's 54 albums up there. There's a lot to dig through. And a lot of those records are improvisational records, not all. And one of the new albums, which is a departure from what I've been doing, is this one here. It just came out on Rope-A-Dope, and it's called Many Ways Around the Sun. And this is my first solo vocal album.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
And I play all the instruments on this record, and it happened during lockdown. That's when I recorded all of it, and really, really thrilled with this record. It's some heartfelt songs that came out, and all about love and healing, really, about this time that we're in. And I think it brings a lot of light to folks that may want to or may need this kind of music,
Agreed.
And in the same light, it's like I'm a painter. I don't know if you know that, but I painted
I did not.
And designed the logo for Pact. So that's one of mine. And I do all these hand painted album covers, and this is a new record that I have out called The Wisdom of Water, and it's a 57-minute spontaneous composition that I played live on IGTV. I think maybe last year sometime, and I put that out just recently. And because I had requests for physical editions, rather than actually print them up, I'm just hand painting a whole bunch of covers, and they're all unique. So you can either download that record or buy the the painting itself, and that's been really great and a lot of fun because everybody gets a unique painting. That you can frame it if you want, but you have the album and the download, so that's pretty cool. And I've been doing a lot of painting and stuff like that, so that kind of textural stuff goes back and forth. I really love textural music and expansive music you can drift off to, and you can pay attention to it or not, like Brian Eno used to say. But I think a lot of this music that I make, it's kind of healing to me. I feel when I play it live and I get in the zone, I feel like it helps me a lot. So that's why I like to make it available to other people, because I think it can help them. And during the lockdown, I put an album out called Inside, which was specifically all about, meditation, and people were going through so much and still are, so these kinds of records, sometimes you go to Spotify or your record collection and you just can't find the music that your soul needs. And, this kind of music I think is really helpful because you can take it on drives, or you just kick back and put on some headphones and relax, or you can do yoga to it or whatever you want to do, but it's kind of like that. It explores, it's a journey. It just needs to be experienced, I'd say, So
I like it.
There's a bunch of those records on one track.
Many ways around the sun, many ways to get things done. Then we'll see our hearts inside, only when our worlds collide.
Excellent. I wasn't aware about your painting, and I have a sneaky suspicion that you're one of those people that can hear your paints as you go along. You can hear the artwork.
Yeah, there's, I'm not sure I have synesthesia, or I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly, but yeah, there. I think if anything, I feel space. I feel spatial stuff when I play music. I can find the nooks in the nooks and crannies in the area of music and the frequencies where music can exist. And there's certain colors that I hear a chord that sounds green, or this chord sounds blue, and that kind of thing. But I really love painting because sometimes after I play a lot after touring or something, my ears are gone. But I still want to be creative or get back to the zone. And I find that I can do that through painting. So it's very relaxing, but also challenging too, just like improvisation is. And it's a textural thing. And part of it is, when is it done? When is the painting done? And that's such a beautiful thing to grapple with, and same with a song. When is a song done? So
You're walking me into right. You're almost answering the questions I have in my head as we go along, because I would love to think I'm creative enough to do some kind of soundscaping work. I'm probably fooling myself, but I'd love to think that I could do that kind of thing. Where does it begin for you? Does it start with a note? Does it start with a chord? Does it start with a color? How does it begin, and how do you get a feel for how long it should go?
Yeah, well, in terms of soundscaping, And, I work with dancers too, so it's very similar. If I'm sitting there in a room with, say, like 10 dancers getting ready to start and we're going to improvise, they're kind of looking at me and I'm looking at them. Anybody can start at any time, but usually it's just that. It's a sound. It could be a drone. It could be a note. It could be a chord. Any of those places you could start. With dance, it's much more interesting to me in a way, because if I make a sound, then I'll see immediately a movement, and then I can start reacting to that, and then they start reacting to the sound, and it becomes very circular. But when you're playing solo, it's you're very isolated in a way, and so it's in your imagination. So I kind of start with a sound and get absorbed in it, and you can kind of not think. The idea is not to think, what should I do next? It's to feel and to flow. And I think the next sound or note will just be through your gut feeling, through your soul or something. And of course you can make soundscapes. It's just, you just get in there and start. And yes, you can paint too, and you can write lyrics and you can do all these things. It's, I think we just start somewhere, wherever that is, and you build from that. And over time, you learn how to do it in a way, but ultimately, you don't want to ever learn how to do anything. You always want to have that kind of childlike aspect of playing, where I don't know how to play my guitar, because you don't want to play what you know. When you're improvising, you want to play what you don't know. So you have to get to a headspace where, it's pretty pure, and you can't worry about making mistakes or hitting the wrong note, because it may be the right note. So you have to be in that kind of mind space where everything is good. And once you get in there and it starts flowing, then you feel that, and you ride with it, and you have transitional moments and stuff like that. And eventually, at some point, for me anyway, it's like I have a built-in clock. Something says we're almost done. This, could be a chord or a progression that has occurred, and then all of a sudden it feels like it needs to wind down now. And lately, it's been around 45 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there, if I'm doing a long form piece.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is this something that's more challenging to do in front of an audience, or how do you interact? What's the give and take there? Do you shut them up and hope they come in, or do you try? How does it work for you?
Well, I've just done three performances I should tell you about. One was in Cleveland, and one was in Durham, North Carolina, and that was both with dancers, and it was with Raphael Xavier and his project called X-Scope, and he invited me to come and work with break dancers, rappers, and poets, which is, hip hop based. But he's like, I want you to do what you do. I want your soundscapes and your ambient stuff and whatever you feel when we dance. And so we did these performances in Cleveland, and we did 2 shows where literally improvised in front of this big audience, and also in Durham, both times. And it was just so amazing to, there's something about an audience when you're playing in front of an audience. You go to another place. I go to another place. It's like it's on, the adrenaline is on, and the dancers begin and you begin, and all of a sudden it all comes together. And it's very sacred, I think, when you get to that space, and everyone is connected and you can feel that connection as a player. And the audience is there and you're aware of them, but you're really just deep in the music. And at the end, it's like, wow, what just happened? That was amazing. And the audience is standing and applauding, and you're like, wow. It's kind of like coming out of a dream. That's how I liken that kind of playing. And the third performance I did recently was I played at Muhlenberg College in this big church, and it was a solo piece. And I sang a couple songs off of Many Ways Around the Sun, but the majority of the concert was soundscape and improv based and abstract. And in that concert, because it was in this big church, that had an effect. And the sound in the church, was very, very spacious and ambient. And the notes would just travel through this giant space, and the audience was there, and I was aware of that. And, it charges the music, both of those things, the audience and the space. And in my head, I think because of the space, I was thinking about angels and demons the whole time. It was very bizarre. Like, I've never really thought about that. But because you're in that space, and I was sitting next to this big pipe organ, there's a resonance in every space that you play in. So that stuff comes through the music, And it was very, very interesting concert and very beautiful to be a part of that. So, yeah.
That does sound fascinating. And so many people would associate soundscaping with more of a progressive rock type thing, and you've taken it into a completely different category where it's dance driven and
can be, yeah,
and more rhythmically oriented. Now, is there a place you still want to go that you haven't gone with your soundscaping?
Yeah, I think I'm starting to introduce the voice more in the improvisational aspect, where I will have a microphone that is also going through my electronics, and then a second microphone that's just pure through the PA. And I like having the option of using the voice. The voice is an amazing instrument, and it's an area that I haven't explored enough on many ways around the sun. Like on this record, let's see where I put it. It's at the bottom, of course, but this album, I made a lot of voice loops that were the basis of the song. So I built some of these songs on this record from these textural voice loops that I created. And originally, when I was making this record, I thought I was going to do an album of voice loops and maybe singing on top of that, much more experimental. But then I ended up writing songs on top of that, so it was pretty cool. Or I should say the songs came through,
Right.
So yeah, that's one area. And, it's like I've done so much with soundscaping. I do that in Pact. I do that with Kurt Rosenwinkel in Bandit 65 and that band. Pretty much everybody I play with, I have aspects of that, that textural thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. Speaking of Pact, you were really excited when Percy Jones's name came up. Everybody knows Percy Jones from Brand X. What about his playing excited you in terms of the opportunity to share a stage with him?
Well, it's like, I had the great opportunity to interview him. I have a show called Searching for Sparks that from time to time I come on and I'll interview a bunch of people like you're doing, and
right.
Some of my heroes, and Percy agreed. And, the thing is that Percy's sound has been in my head since I was probably 15 years old, from those early Brand X records. Rock and Roll, that album was a big one, and Livestock. I just remember those two albums specifically were albums that I love to listen to. And then his work with Brian Eno, those classic Brian Eno albums, Another Green World and Before and After Science, are, I mean, his bass work, his bass sound in those records, it's just has become part of culture, or part of my culture anyway, and,
right.
And also his work with John Hassel. Those three areas of Percy really affected my life. And I think he has such a unique bass sound. Fretless, of course, nothing like Jocko, who was kind of overshadowed Percy in that time, I think. But Percy is a completely unique voice, and I've met him many times throughout the years, and always wanted to play with him, and it's just totally an honor and a blessing to work with him. He's a gentleman and an incredibly funny person, which has quite a sense of humor. We have a lot of fun on the road, and just a monstrous player. And he's very inspiring to play with. And I look forward to every time we can play, and I savor those moments. It's I don't take them lightly. And it's a great band pact is. So always look forward to trying to make some great music with him and have a lot of fun. And all the guys in the band, they're just incredible musicians.
Nice. I've enjoyed this record. It's very of the moment. I mean, I'm assuming that kind of feel never really dies, because you have to remain there no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that particular album was done in 2020, and it was at Shapeshifter Lab in New York and Brooklyn. And again, we Percy and I knew each other. We'd never played together. Alex and I didn't know each other. And Kenny and I knew each other. And Kenny had played with both Percy and Alex, so there was a connection there. But it was really sublime what went down, because we did 2 sets of music, plus a sound check that's not on the record, which was really like could have been another side, but it wasn't recorded. And it was, it was hard to believe this music was coming out of us. Like, I was playing in realms that I had not played in before. That rhythm section of Kenny Grohowski and Percy Jones is formidable and extremely unique in terms of the harmonic content that Percy might throw in as a bass player. One of the things I love about his bass playing is, like many bass players, like, hey, we're kind of here, but Percy will tilt the music. Like, wherever it is,
okay,
he'll put that note that makes it tilt and go another direction. And he's always in charge of the music in a way, like whatever we're doing, he can make the direction move. It's fantastic.
Nice. There's sound to be found pretty much anywhere. Getting towards the end, what do you want people to get out of your music more than anything else? What matters the most?
Oh, well, I just hope it can bring some good to their ears and make them feel good in their days on this planet, so to speak, because that's how I look at it. I'm just trying to bring some beauty into this world, hopefully, whether it's, aggressive, power stuff, or beautifully light textural music, or acoustic music, or songs, whatever it is, that it can give someone some light, give someone some inspiration, hopefully, and inspiration to create your own stuff. I think it's great to create, and I think that's my life goal, really, is just to keep doing music and keep painting and keep creating records and keep touring and playing as long as I possibly can, because I think that's why I'm here on the planet. I'm supposed to be doing this stuff and collaborating with wonderful people, whether they're dancers or musicians or poets, singers, whatever it may be, So, that's a big part of it. And I should mention too, Pact will be touring in December. I don't know if you know.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
I was going to ask.
I think you'll have to check the website, but December 13th, I believe it starts in Rochester. I know we'll be in Rochester, New York, and then Cleveland, Ohio. We'll be in Buffalo. And I think we're going to be in the Catskills on the 16th or 17th. And we're recording a new album as well.
Excellent.
Time, which will be in a studio in the Catskills. So really excited about that. And 22nd, we're in Piermont, New York, which is also up north. And then the Iridium, January 3rd in New York City. So that's kind of loose and rough, but those dates will be coming out soon on Facebook and stuff like that.
Excellent. Well, you also answered my last question as to what was coming out next. I know things in COVID times are up in the air at best, so it has to be a bit of a struggle wondering what's going to happen from one day to the next.
Yeah, it's really true. And the other thing to look forward to is November, if all goes well, the new Orion Tango album will be out, and that's called The In-Between. And features Jeremy Carlstead on drums and Barry Meehan on bass. And I'm doing all the guitars and some bass on this album and electronics. And a really interesting album where it's kind of blending progressive with mutated metal. I call it mutated because it's kind of progressive metal, but it's not that either, and with free jazz.
Nice.
And it's quite a powerful album. So really psyched about releasing that. So that'll be coming too on 1K Recordings.
I was just about saying we should all just get to 1K Recordings, that website, and just pour over it and find
Absolutely.
some stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us here. We look forward to hearing what you have down the road.
Such a pleasure, Cedric. Great to hang out. Great to meet you finally.
Same here. Glad we finally got our schedule straight.
Yes.
I do appreciate the time.
Me too, man.
Thanks.
Much. Have a great Saturday.
You too. Thank you.